I will be discussing the social injustice of discrimination towards individuals with disabilities in Good Country People by Flannery O'Connor, Cora, Unashamed by Langston Hughes, and Everyday Use by Alice Walker. In Flannery O'Connor's short story, Good Country People, the character who is belittled due to her disability is the character Joy, or Holga as she prefers to be addressed by. Joy has lost her leg in an unfortunate hunting accident when she was 9. Throughout the story, the most troublesome character for Joy is her own mother, Miss Hopewell. The description of Miss Hopewell directly contradicts her last name. She does not seem to give hope towards anyone, especially her own daughter. The first indication of discrimination and belittlement is when Joy refers to herself as Vulcan, which is the forge and fire goddess in the Roman culture, or in the Greek mythology, Hephaestus, who are only relevant when called upon. There is an added symbolism to disability with the reference to Hephaestus, who in some mythology has a crippled leg. Joy views her relationship with her mom similar to the forge god when she refers to herself as the goddess who had to come when called. Her mother consistently refers to her as a child and not having any common sense. But the most infamous moment is when she informs us, the reader, that Joy is in fact 32 and has a PhD in philosophy. Even with this respectable and prestigious accomplishment, Miss Hopewell does not see it as an accomplishment. Miss Hopewell makes her point clear when she fantasizes being embarrassed to admit to others that her daughter is a philosopher rather than an engineer. But Joy would beg to differ. She insinuates that if it wasn't for her heart condition, she'd be far from the Red Hills and Good Country People. Her dedication for knowledge is apparent, and she presents it with confidence. But still, Miss Hopewell believes that her own daughter could not make it through school again because of her heart condition. Joy's inability to go out into the world comes from her mother's lack of confidence in her as a person, rather than someone with a multiple disability. But Miss Hopewell is not shy to give compliments to Miss Freeman's daughters, Gleness or Caramai, who do not have disabilities. Miss Hopewell's inability to understand her ignorance is what creates a large distaste between her and her daughter, Joy. In Cora, Unashamed by Langston Hughes, the character who has a disability is the character of Jessie. Unlike Joy, who has a physical disability, Jessie has a mental disability which affects her school performance. Her low test scores and anxiety when faced with telling her parents is what drives the relationship between her and Cora. In the story, Cora Unashamed, it is immediately stated that Jessie's parents are ashamed of her stupidity. And during the same scene, Cora informs us that everybody found fault in Jessie except for her. Her mother was confident in saying that Jessie is a stupid girl. Jessie's father, on the other hand, had no bond with his daughter in any way. He was busy selling and buying in the city to care for her. And as for Jessie's siblings, they hardly ever wished to see her, and when they did, it was only during mealtime. The discrimination that the students have towards their daughter are what lead to her ultimate demise at the end of the story. Her parents only wished to recognize her disability as being slower than most people when it came to school, but in fact, she is a charming young girl who has potential in other aspects of life. Her conversations and cooking scenes with Cora exemplify that. Jessie had potential to having a loving life with the Greek ice cream boy Willie. She felt comfort in him like no one else, and of course Jessie seemed happy to have the chance to birth a child of her own. But with years of hatred and distaste from her parents, eventually leads to Jessie's overwhelming depression. With the loss of her child, Jessie does not have anyone else by her side and nothing to live for. While Cora was a dear friend, the loss of a baby and the lack of love from her own family ultimately is too much for Jessie to survive. In Alice Walker's Everyday Use the disability of the character Maggie is dominant in the morals of the story. Maggie has suffered from severe burns which she received in a house fire when she was young. On top of being severely scarred, it seems that Maggie is not exactly the smartest woman, which is implied by her mother saying, "Maggie knows she is not bright." The mother's biggest flaws in the story is not letting Maggie be adventurous in her own life. The mother consistently mentions Maggie's shuffling walk and immediately falling with a negative comment. One example is when Dee arrives at the home and Maggie makes a dash for the car, and within a split second the mother says, "Come back here," as though her own sister is a threat. There is resentment towards Dee, which causes mother to focus more on Dee rather than Maggie. While the mother may not be as brutal as the Studevants or Miss Hopewell, she is still sheltering her daughter Maggie to the point where she fears confrontation. This fear comes out when she immediately backs down when Dee wishes to have their grandmother's quilts. And the diction used by Alice Walker reveals her scared innocence when she used the word quiver when Maggie ran behind her mother. The mother's hold on Maggie is revealed with Dee's final lines to her sister, which were, "You ought to try to make something of yourself too, Maggie. It's really a new day for us, but from the way you and Mama still live, you'd never know it." And Maggie's response is an honest and real smile, not one tainted with fear. While Dee can be incredibly rude, her final words reveal encouragement towards her sister. Despite her disability and self-consciousness, she could make something of herself just as Dee did. It's just a matter of breaking through the wall that was built by her mother.